Okay.
Could you give me hosting?
Yeah, will do.
Right, thanks, Lisa. Good evening. My name is Ian Fradgley. I'm Chairman of the Town Council Planning Consultative Committee, and I welcome you to this meeting. Some housekeeping and information before we start. Item 7 on the agenda allows the public to address the meeting during public participation on non-agenda items. Thereafter, only persons registered to speak on specific applications will be permitted to do so when invited. This meeting is being recorded. Please could I remind members and those registered to speak to keep muted until invited to speak by having raised their virtual yellow hand, and when finished speaking, please mute yourself. And we will do the voting by raise of our hands. Okay. Councillors, before we start the meeting, I've got one piece of information, is that at additional chairman's actions, we deferred 21/1311, which is the Swan Gardens and the proposal to use temporary use of the land for an outdoor theatre. Okay. So I'll now declare the meeting open. I've been involved with this committee for a number of years, and in that time we have had some exceptional planning clerks, but we now have said our goodbyes to Joe Mains. And so I would like to welcome Margot Galvin, who has agreed to take up the challenge as our new Planning Consultative Committee clerk, which in my view is one of the most interesting of town council committees to clerk, and also learn a lot about the planning process of our town. So welcome, Margot.
Thank you very much, Chair. Very much looking forward to supporting you all. I found it very interesting so far.
We haven't done anything yet.
Can only get better.
Okay, item 2, apologies for absence. Do we have an apologies for absence? You have to
no apologies received, Chair.
Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest on items on the agenda. Do I have any declarations of items on the agenda? No. Item 4, to receive written requests for dispensation for disclosable pecuniary interests. There are none. And item 5, to grant such requests. There are none. Item 6 is a consultation presentation on pre-planning applications. We have none. Councillor Fradgley, you've got your hand up.
Yes, please may I make a declaration? I have in the past and will probably in the future receive free tickets for press night at the theatre, which I disclose in the book of inducements at the Town Council. And that is along with other councillors in the district. Thank you.
Okay. I would also like to declare that I have this free ticket as well, not as a councillor, but as a husband. Item 7, public participation of non-agenda items on matters under which the council has control of or is a consultative body. I think that the people here present are more here about the theatre, and we don't have any members of the public. There's been a slight slip up on the agenda, as you'll see, because we've got 2 item 8s. So I'll do item 8, part 1, to approve draft open minutes of the Planning Consultative Committee meeting held on the 13th of April 2020. Do I have your agreement to those minutes? If you could raise your hands. What you have to do now, Margot, is count the hands. and it looks like it's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Item 8 on the agenda, part 2, is to deal with the planning applications. As I've already mentioned, we have one being a temporary theatre in the Swan Gardens. And I would like to start off by asking Neil to do his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So this is a planning application in the Swan Gardens, south of the theatre, along Waterside. The proposal is for a temporary change of use of the land and the construction of a temporary outdoor theatre for performances between July and September inclusive, so 3 months only. And by the end of October, the proposal is to be removed and the land restored to its former condition. There's another element to the proposal, which is also some improvements to the existing path along the river with new bound gravel surfacing. I'm sure you'll all be familiar with the application site. It's the area just immediately to the south of the RST. So it's the area outlined in red here. That area is the extent of the footpath improvements as well. So that's why there's a tail to the red line site. A couple of photographs for you. Again, I'm sure you're familiar with the site. That's quite a shadowy, dark overhead aerial. So you're looking at the area in here. And the existing plan at the moment, this is just the garden with trees around the edge. The river's on the right-hand side, and that's the back of the theatre. And that is the crescent-shaped seating area, so it faces the theatre. It seats 500 people, although if social distancing continues throughout the summer, the capacity will be much reduced with vacant seats in between household bubbles, etc. In terms of the elevations, so that's the riverside elevation and the roadside elevation. It is effectively a steel frame where the seats are mounted, and there is a mesh. There's sort of a zoomed in image here, which shrouds the side of the structure. So very much a temporary seating structure that you see often at various events, sporting events and arts events, etc. In total, 7 meters in height, or slightly less as it reduces down here. There is lighting columns which reach 9 meters high, so a couple of meters above the seating or the balustrade at the back there. That's the rear elevation that faces the garden. And that's just a cross section. So you've got a stage in the middle with the crescent surrounding it. And in terms of the the Riverside Walk improvements, that's the length of the improvement there. There's disabled access and seating available within the front rows. And just in terms of the planning issues, it is obviously within the conservation area. There's a number of listed buildings in the vicinity, most notably the Swan Theatre itself, which is a grade 2 star listed building. So there is a heritage issue, but obviously this is a very temporary 3 months proposal. I probably don't need to explain the reasons why. That's probably fairly obvious. And according to the planning statement, because there's no because it's outside effectively, most of the events, save for 2 or 3, will be finishing at 9:30, and obviously you'll be aware of other late night uses in the vicinity, which obviously go beyond that. So that's probably all I need to say about the presentation. Happy to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Neil. Right, councillors, does anybody want to ask Neil for points of clarification? Councillor Cleave?
Thank you. Neil, can you just confirm when it says, and I'm just reading the new bound gravel surfacing, I assume, does that mean it is still wheelchair accessible. It's all flat. The gravel bit first threw me, but it's bound gravel. Does that mean it's all cemented in, or?
Yeah, it is a surface which is gravel, but sort of stuck into tarmacadam, if you like. So it's not loose gravel, so it's suitable for wheelchairs, pushchairs, etc. So, but it has the appearance that it is a gravel path, effectively, but more solid in that respect.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Chair. Another question on the path. Your first slide showed the little extension of the path, but it didn't seem to be taking the path right up to where the boardwalk is for the boats. And I just wondered, is there a space being left unimproved there? Could you just clarify?
Right, so that's the location plan. So the area of path improvement won't be outside of that red line site. So it's just within this area in here, and presumably along the side of the area where the seating is going to go. This is the only plan that's been submitted. This is the start of the path improvement works effectively here, and it extends down to that tail, if you like. It says about 76 meters worth of the path will be resurfaced to allow for grading back to existing levels, and it also makes it clear that that's not going to be affecting the root protection zones of those trees as well. Beyond that red line, I don't know what the state of the path is. If there's any other proposals for that, that's possibly a question for the speaker.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Councillor Fradgley? Demute yourself.
You're just doing it. This might be a question for the applicant as well. The piece of grass between the wall of the temporary theatre and the wall at the side of the access to the boats, that will stay open presumably. The Nine Mans Morris will still be accessible, and can it still be used for people overflowing from the Dirty Duck, which it is actually used for at the moment, alongside the preening swans and geese? Well, swans actually. Thank you.
My understanding is that during performances, that area may well be closed off for the backstage element of the performances, etc. But obviously, when there aren't performances going on, I don't know how secure the seating will be, whether other patrons of the Dirty Duck will be able to go on them. I suspect not. But I haven't read or seen any details as to how it would be secured outside of performance times, if you see what I mean. So that probably is a question for the applicant.
Right, I can't see any other yellow hands up. So we'll go on to the speakers. Mr. Greenwood, I gather you've registered to speak. Would you like to demute yourself? Could you? I gather there's two of you might want to speak. Could you just tell me how you're going to split the speaking up?
Yeah, I understand that we've got 3 minutes between us, and Stephen Rebeck will talk for the first 2 minutes or so, and then I'll finish up whatever's left over. And then after that, we'll address the questions that were asked to Mr. Pierce.
Okay, well, you've got 3 minutes. You'll be on a timer, which the committee clerk will operate, and she will give you a warning with 30 seconds to go.
If you could give us a warning at 2 minutes in case Stephen has run on longer than he expects.
I've got my own stopwatch here.
We'll give you one at 2 minutes and one at 2 minutes 30.
Thank you very much.
So tell us when you want to start.
Okay, I'll start if that's okay, Chair. My name is Stephen Rebeck. I'm the Technical Director at the RSC. And we are obviously, after the last year, have been planning a myriad of different situations whereby we want to be able to bring audiences back into the town, not only for the RSC, but also for the revitalisation of the town itself, and indeed a lot of our fellow businesses. We've been looking at, or back in February, we were looking at how we might do that as soon as possible. And at the time when COVID cases were extremely high, we felt that to have an open air theatre would give audiences a little more confidence in coming back, either as a socially distanced audience, or indeed as a non-socially distanced audience, not knowing what it would be like come the summer. However, even with the easing of restrictions that are occurring at the moment, or are planned for at the moment, we still feel that an open air theatre with the opportunities to be outside rather than in will probably appeal to an audience more, particularly if we haven't fully finished vaccinations by then, than it would be to go inside straight away. So we're making it very much an event, an opportunity to see the RSC in a different way, and to bring people back into the town is our main objective. We'll be performing between July and September, as has already been discussed, and a single show, Comedy of Errors, to be noted that it's one of Shakespeare's best comedies, but also it's his shortest play. So we'll be doing 8 performances per week, not playing Monday evenings, but playing.
You've just had 2 minutes.
Okay, I'll pass over to Les, who's going to talk a little bit more about the planning application itself.
Okay, it's been a bit of a tricky one to put together for planning. I've had a short time frame to try and get the application in, and lots of what we call constraints. There's flood risk, there's listed buildings in conservation areas, important trees, problems with ground conditions because the ground is a bit uneven in
30 seconds left.
Structural capacity, archaeology, noise to neighbors, construction details, construction management, and the design has evolved as it's gone through. And also we've been trying to improve the accessibility of the Riverside footpath. We've carefully considered all of these and come back with a proposal that we think covers all those bases. In particular, I mentioned that excavation around the trees would have to be done with an air spade under supervision.
Just had 3 minutes.
Expert. Is that it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
I'll shut up now.
Right, councillors, if you want to ask a question, please could you put your yellow hand up? Councillor Fradgley.
Can I just actually repeat the question that I did before? It's that piece of green between the back wall and the pathway to the boats. How will that be treated? Will that be cut? Will that be taken out of public use completely during the 3 months? Or will there be periodic use of that land? Will the drinkers from the Dirty Duck be able to use it on occasions when the theatre is not using it?
Can I answer that, Councillor? We're not planning on closing that at all, even during performances. Obviously, the only time that, when audience are moving in and out of the theatre, there's going to be, we'll be managing that situation. But otherwise, when the theatre's not being used, we'll have fencing around it, and security. Our own security team will be patrolling the area, but we're not intending to close the rest of the gardens. Indeed, we'd like to keep them. We want people to use them as much as possible, and indeed, and we won't be closing the footpath either, up from the border right the way through.
Thank you.
Councillor Cleeve.
Right, thank you. A couple of questions, please, if I may. Just looking, so obviously the performance is July to September, but I assume it's going to, obviously it'll have to go up a bit earlier and it'll take a while to come down. Just wondering, at the end of it, will you be replacing the lawn area back to how it was? How will it look once everything's been removed? Because obviously it will damage the lawn, and it's a big pride for a lot of people. It gets used Just wondering what that is. I'll ask my questions now, if that's all right, and then come back individually. The next question was the pathway. Because you're not doing the whole segment, is there a reason why you're stopping? So you're only doing that one segment that's on the plan and not going all the way through to the boats? I didn't know if that was part of it. And the last one is, can you just say where the audience will be entering from? Will it be coming from that area where Councillor Fradgley just talked about the Dirty Duck, where they'll be sitting? Is that the entrance for the public to come in, the audience? Sorry, there's 3 questions in one go, so I don't know who wants to answer that.
You want to answer those, Les?
I think if I take the first 2, you want to pick up on audience entry, Steve.
Yeah.
So the idea is to restore it to grass afterwards. So they're putting stone in order to support the theatre. That will stay with it, and then new topsoil and will be brought in, and then that'll be reseeded on top. So it will restore a lawn surface afterwards. The stone will stay because it makes it possible if they do want to do something like this in the future, to potentially bring it back. The path, the reason for the path, as I understand it, is because of problems with wheelchair access along that route, because the trees have been lifting the tarmac. The path system that they've chosen is by an example of use at Kew Gardens. It's a bound gravel, which means gravel bound by a resin, and it's got some flexibility in it so that it can be lifted by the roots without cracking and forming sharp edges. They're only planning to take it beyond the trees rather than take it all the way to the ferry landing, I presume because of reasons of cost. Because they're bringing in where it's needed for accessibility. So do you want to tackle the third one, Stephen?
Yes, we're planning on audiences coming down Waterside. We'll be going through into the main entrance of the RST, and then coming down the colonnade, and we'll be coming out at the Swan End, and we'll go to the 2 front access points at the theatre, either side of the stage. We're also going to have the openings in the wall further up on Southern Avenue opposite the Duck for access through there, because there will be 2 access points. I don't know if you noticed on the plan, those 2 access points through the auditorium itself, which I don't know if anyone remembers. In the theatres we have the vomitories, we have those walkways that go through the audience. In the same way, we've replicated those, but they will also be audience access through into the seating as well. So they'll be coming from both ends of the auditorium, as it were.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Cleave. Mr. Mayor?
I've got 1 question arising and 2 new quick ones. Can I just check that the work that you do into the path will enable wheelchair users to access the auditorium? That's the overriding point. Yeah, okay, thank you. Right, could you just clarify, you said you had done some residents consultation, just if you could give some summary guidance as to what the residents said, and what was the overriding criteria in your time period? I was quite sure why you decided to close at a certain time and bring down, whether that was imposed upon you or whether that was weather related or something. Thank you.
It's certainly, I'll answer that last one, certainly partly weather related. It also coincides with us opening the RST again, which will be at the beginning of October. So we'll be opening the Christmas show then, and obviously not only is the weather far more unpredictable at that point, but it also the nights start drawing in, and we will be then having to use much more electric light for illumination.
And the resident survey consultation?
That's underway at the moment. We don't have any. We haven't spoken to. Well, we're in the process of planning that at the moment, but I haven't got any results to offer at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Lee.
Yeah, it's just my questions relate mainly to the construction plan you've put in on the website and on the planning portal. So, as I understand it, you're basically going to be removing down to 400 mil from the existing level of the ground and replacing that with crushed stone. Do you have an idea of how many vehicle movements that will require? And I assume they're going down waterside.
Yeah, well, we'll actually be digging down slightly more on the road side because of the slope of the garden itself, and then yes, putting in a 400 mil so that we can level it. That is, so we've got a level. We're not sure exactly how many, but we think probably about 30 loads of gravel over that period of time. But we won't be doing that from the road. They'll be driving into the car park behind the Swan. And offloading from there.
Okay. And just a quick one, just to clarify, in terms of the material you're taking out, is that being taken away from the site to another location? Yep. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, actually, that's partly clarified one of the things I was going to ask. But John, I think you said that obviously the crushed gravel, crushed stone is going to stay there, and then topsoil and returfed on top of that, as I understand, if that's correct. Yes. But if this exercise is successful, would the theatre see this? I mean, you sort of alluded to it as an ongoing summer alternative theatre venue.
I think it's better for Stephen to answer that.
We don't have any definite plans at all beyond the end of this summer. It's been built as a temporary structure. It can be erected and dismantled in less than a week, in both ways. So it would be foolish for us to just throw it away and say we're never going to do this again if the opportunity is there. But we're fervently hoping that by this time next year we've got at least 2 of our theatres reopened. We're not sure about the other place as yet, but you know, just from a logistical and financial situation, it's unlikely we'll be opening a 4th theatre regularly, but we want to keep that option open for special events, special projects, and if the infrastructure is there and we can build an auditorium relatively quickly, it's another string to our bow.
Thank you.
Just to emphasise that this planning permission wouldn't allow for that. This planning permission would end in October this year, so we'd have to apply again if we want to ever bring it back. Yeah.
Chair, can I just ask one other question, please?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you. Just really about the sort of the impact of the noise and lighting. Presumably, well, no, is there going to be amplification, and what sort of spill into the sort of surrounding areas do you envisage, both sound and lighting?
There is going to be an element of amplification purely because we've taken advice from the Open Air Theatre in Regent's Park, who find that even the rustling of leaves, let alone tour buses and swans taking off from the river, requires a certain amount of amplification just so the audience know what's going on. And certainly if an actor turns up stage with their back to the audience, it's well nigh impossible to hear them. So we're doing voice amplification. There won't be any, there is some music being played, and again, it will be marginally amplified. So that's the plan with that. It's not like we're you know, having a lot of pre-recorded music or anything like that. There's some live musicians only. As far as the other part of your question, which escapes me,
it was any bleed of light.
Oh, bleed of light, yes, of course. We're rigging some lights up there, as you saw in the presentation, but it's really just illumination rather than a big lighting rig. It's so that we find, or you'll know that if you can't see an actor, you can't hear them. So as the night wears on, and certainly as the months go past, the night will be getting, the evenings will be getting gloomier. It's just enough to be able to see the cast. We're not having a big lighting rig or strobe lights or flashing lights of any kind at all. It's just enough to illuminate the actors. And it's not even what we would call a lighting design. It's purely some illumination. We'll be relighting the show when we take it indoors, when we tour it in the autumn.
Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Curtis. May I ask you a question? I appreciate that you have chosen a shorter play. Could you tell me if there is going to be an intermission, say halfway through or whatever, and what you anticipate all the people will be doing if there is an intermission? And if there isn't an intermission, are you providing toilet facilities? Thank you.
We are providing toilet facilities. We're using the toilets inside the building in the colonnade. And we're not planning on an interval either. So we are planning on going straight through. And indeed, we'll still be using dressing rooms for actors and backstage facilities to some extent within the existing building, because it is so close. It's 50 yards from the front door, from the back door.
Thank you. One other thing I thought was, have you a way of dealing with anybody who gets a bit rowdy out in the street?
Nope.
Well, I mean,
depending on the rowdiness, it's whether we call the police or not, I suppose. But yeah. No, we won't be dealing with them ourselves. We will put up with extraneous noise for sure.
Okay. Councillor Curtis, have you put your hand, or are you getting rid of your hand? Councillor Cleave.
Yeah, just a quick question, and without with no interval. What's the running time of the show? Have you? I know probably haven't finished that quite yet. But...
Difficult to say, but we're thinking about 2 hours.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, I've not got anybody else who wants to ask a question. Right, thank you. We are now going to go into debate, and you're quite welcome to stay and listen to the debate. Right, who wants to start? Councillor Lee.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this very short, to be perfectly honest. This is a temporary structure. We're getting benefit for the improvement of the footpath. It certainly is a bit of a hazard. I mean, I walk down it fairly regularly. It's the trees are impacting on it. So I'd be very happy to support this application. I see no reason why we shouldn't.
Councillor Fradgley.
Sorry, it takes time to demute. I just want a couple of points, actually. I was aware in Greenwich Park during the Olympics that the equestrian structure went there, which was vast. It destroyed the grass for a very short period of time, but it came back within the year and was absolutely fine. The other thing I'd just like to say is that consideration for the economic health and vitality of the town is a material consideration for planning. And so I think this actually fits very much into the regeneration of the town. And as Councillor Lee said, I would actually be inclined to support this application.
Thank you. Councillor Cleave.
Thank you. Yeah, for every negative comment I have read, which always seems to be there, I've seen 2 times the amount of positive comments. Before I moved back to the UK, I lived in Vancouver. We had Bod on the beach every summer, which was just like that. It was a temporary structure that was on grassy area. It brought in so many people. It was Shakespeare in the Park essentially, and it was a wonderful production. And obviously, I've missed going to the RSC, but I would probably be one of those that would, despite being vaccinated, still uncomfortable going indoors. So to have an outdoor facility, I definitely would be for that. And I think, yeah, for the economy of the town, it would be great to have this, especially this summer. So I'm definitely for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Curtis.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'm completely agreeing with Councillor Cleave, and I think the like her, I'm a little bit wary of going into an enclosed theatre, and I think this could encourage people to go back, to feel that they're going back to the theatre, and then when it does close down in the autumn, when it is taken away, hopefully they'll be sufficiently encouraged to go back into the main house and to other events around the town as well. I think the argument of the economic benefit to the town is very strong indeed. My only reservation would be, not even a reservation actually, I'd like to see the improvements to the footpath, which I also go along pretty frequently, extended up as far as the boardwalk, to have it finishing a few yards short of that seems sort of not quite spoiling the ship for a ha'porth of the tar, but I think it would be better if the theatre could be persuaded to extend those improvements all the way through there. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis, do you mean go along or run?
Run.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'm in agreement with what everybody said. My only caveat here is the consultation with the residents hasn't seemed to have got anywhere yet. Now, my recollection of the street is that there are actually very few residents who would be affected by this, but I do think that actually if there are genuine concerns raised by local residents, that they need to be picked up and addressed in advance. That's the only, but otherwise I'm absolutely fine with it.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Undoubtedly I would be in full support of this. I think it's of great importance to the town as we move into a much better situation. It will have a great impact on the economy of the town, and for anybody who has any reservations about it residents wise, we did have, or used to have, a very similar setup to this in the Dell many years ago, on a slightly smaller scale. I think it will be incredible for the town, and I think it will be a great start to the RSC coming back into the system.
Thank you. Right, could I have a proposal? Come on, somebody give me a proposal. Councillor Fradgley.
Can I propose that we support this application, just bearing in mind what the Mayor said, that if there are any serious issues raised by residents, that those are addressed. But I would actually propose that we support this proposal.
Do I have a seconder for that? Mr. Mayor, thank you. Right, I'd like to go to the vote on that proposal then. If you could put your real hands up. Yeah, that looks unanimous. Yep, thank you. What's going to happen now is that Neil, our planning consultant, is going to key our response into the SDC portal, planning portal, and you will be able to see what is saying, and then the councillors have got to agree to the wording. Okay, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. I've hit the support button and the comments are as follows. This temporary proposal will assist the RST and the wider town in its economic recovery after the recent COVID restrictions and should be welcomed. The improvements to the footpath are also welcomed.
Thank you, Neil. Is everybody happy with that? Councillor Fradgley, you've got your hand up.
I just wonder if we just put in that phrase, waiting for the residents' consultation. Yeah. Any issues raised by, serious issues raised by residents would be addressed. We would seek to address.
Should be addressed.
Should be addressed. Yeah. Okay.
My only concern with that is you're looking into the future somewhat. Now, if you're caveating your support subject to no adverse impact on neighbours, that's one thing, but I don't think that you can caveat your support subject to all neighbours' concerns being addressed, because some of those concerns might not be addressable, if that's the right word, and indeed some of them might not be reasonable. So far, there's been no comments received, which is a good sign. And I think you're right, the nearest residential properties to this, I believe, are owned by the RST anyway. So, and I mentioned before, there are other late night uses in the vicinity. I appreciate that this is something different. I'm sure the Dirty Duck would be chuffed to bits to have 500 patrons on their lawn drinking their ale, but I'm sure that doesn't happen very often unless they've got a beer festival going on. So there is a higher concentration, I accept, with an element of amplification. So this is slightly different, but I mean, I'm quite happy to add subject to no adverse impact on neighbours, and that covers the noise, the sort of the light spillage and those sorts of planning issues, if you like. But again, 3 months during the summer, if there is an effect, it's a limited effect. So I'm happy to add that one.
I'd be happy with that. Thank you.
So I've just added at the end, subject to no adverse impact on neighbours' amenity.
Right, Councillor Fradgley, you've still got your hand up. Are you going to say something, or are you going to drop your hand? Councillor Curtis?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I thought Stephen Rebeck had his hand up wanting to come in at some point.
I'm sorry, we're in the middle of the debate.
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you. Okay, is everybody happy with that now? Could you put your hands up, please? Councillor Taylor? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, those comments are submitted, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Right, Mr. Greenwood, Mr. Rebeck and Ben, you're welcome to stay and listen to the rest of the meeting, or I could say go across to the pub, but
thank you very much all.
Okay, thank you. Okay, item 8.2, to note the action by the town clerk in respect of the chairman's actions on the 28th, of which Councillor Taylor and myself attended, and Councillor Taylor and myself also attended the additional chairman's actions yesterday, whatever the date was yesterday. Item 8.3, street trading and licensing. There are none. 8.4, there's nothing very much in there at all. So going to 8.5, it's an item that we spoke about last at the last meeting about street naming themes. You have in the appendices the map and the list of existing street names that Councillor Lee has spent hours organising. So I'd like to invite Councillor Lee to lead on this particular item.
Yes, hi there. Thanks, Chair. Been great the feedback we've had through. Fortunately, it's coincided with the time where I've had less time to devote to this than I would have liked. But I think what we've had come through has been great, and I think, as I've always said, it's more of a case of doing our homework ahead of time, but still having to make a decision on anything going forward. So I think all of the suggestions made by this committee and the wider councillors involved in the town council have been great. What I'd suggest is, because we don't have any immediate need to use them, I would propose putting a folder in the PPC. What I'll do is update the mapping based upon the feedback I've had from the various councillors on things I've missed out on. Update the database, put that there as well, and again keep a note of all of these great suggestions, and possibly perhaps develop some of them in terms of if we do make a decision to go with one of these themes in the future for a suitable development, we've got a list already set up, so that should make things easier for us.
Thank you, Councillor. Looking at your yellow list, there are definitely some of the names in the yellow list which have already been allocated.
Yes. So where I got this data from is actually from the postcode database, which the town council have access to. Within that database, it basically puts in everything that gets registered. So what you'll see is basically our previous hard work, perhaps under duress in terms of thinking about it. I mean, I think probably the one we did really well, I think, was the Bishopton 500. So what you'll see in there is basically the street addresses for the Bishopton 500. They obviously don't exist quite yet, so I've marked them in yellow. But there's a number of streets that will develop from that database and will become formal streets within Stratford-upon-Avon.
Yeah. Well, all I'm saying is, Councillor Lee, is that I could give you some on that list which are already allocated, which I will do. And what I'd like is for the other councillors to look at the yellow list to see if they have got any things to say about it. I have had, following on from a conversation with another councillor, I did talk to the Stratford Society about it, and they had an email this morning. I'll just read out what they've got to say. They say, why not celebrate some of our healthcare generals who have led us through this war with COVID? What about Whitty Drive, Vantam Close, Stevens Road, Valence Crescent, and Sarah Gilbert Way, as an example of people that have been prominent in the war against COVID. Is that of any comments on that? Does anybody want to comment? Councillor Lee?
Yeah, I think that's a cracking idea. It really is.
Yeah.
Particularly if we get a new housing development, you've got a already named list, and I think it suits a good point. It'll mark. I mean, these names will last for potentially hundreds of years, so it does mark quite a good point in history. So that's a cracking suggestion.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
I thought there was a protocol about not naming streets after living people, but am I wrong in that, or?
I don't know, Mr. Mayor, actually. I think that's something we ought to research.
No, right. I must be wrong in that, because I know that one of my friends, Cabin Woodward, who probably you don't know, but he's a runner from Leamington, and he broke the world record, and I know he's got a road named after him. So,
yeah.
He was still alive at the time, so I think we might be okay. It's probably something to check, actually. Yeah, just to.
Perhaps we could ask our committee clerk to see if she can find anything about that. Would you do that, Margot? You have to demute yourself to say anything.
Yes. A lot of nodding going on there. Yes, I'll look into that for you. Be very happy to do that.
Thank you. I mean, I know there are some on there anyway. Okay, so are you, Councillor Cleave?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, don't we just need permission from the families or from the person involved to use their name if it's actually being named after somebody?
Well, I think we'll rely on the committee clerk to take up that point as well, Councillor Cleave.
Yeah, there was one other. When we're looking at names, do we want them specifically to be themes? Because I was looking up some of our sister Stratford's road names. So some of the road names in like Stratford, Ontario and Stratford, Australia. So whether we could maybe twin with some of their road names as well. that might be something that we could do to acknowledge that there are other Stratfords. I think he's waiting for the phone.
Sorry, I muted myself while the phone was, and Jenny was already muted anyway.
Yeah, I was just saying whether we could also look at twinning some road names to some of the other Stratfords around the world. So the Stratford, Ontario, obviously Stratford in Australia and New Zealand, whether we can twin some names with there. And just so the theme would be that it's in Stratford, Ontario, or something like that as well.
Councillor Cleave, are you on that committee? I forgot what it's called now. The Sisters, Stratford Sisters or something?
Oh, Stratfords of the World, yeah. I'm
yes.
the town council rep for it.
Right. Okay.
Which is what made me think about it.
Well, perhaps you could bring that forward as well.
Yep.
If you want to talk to them about it at your next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Councillor Fradgley?
I was just going to say something similar, that it is sister cities, and perhaps we actually look at a small group that might take one name from each of the participating countries and do something along those lines.
Yeah. Okay, does anybody else want to say anything further about street naming? No? Okay, I'll move on to the next item. Item 9, Chairman's verbal report. Just a couple of things to report. At SDC Planning Committee last week, the wheel was proposed as grant and was granted 6-4 and 1 abstention. Pragnall's was proposed as refuse, but was granted unanimous. So that's 2 applications that we've been involved with over the last few weeks. And that's what the district have done. Item 10, request for alteration. Not at this point, no. So we're nearly there, aren't we? To register when necessary a representative from the Planning Consultative Committee for the planning meeting on the 12th of May. Well, I haven't actually seen an agenda for that yet. It should be out, but I haven't seen it. So we'll have to wait and see if we've got anything on it. And there's no agenda yet for the 26th of May anyway. Item 12, to appoint substitutes for the next chairman's actions on the 26th of May. Could I just mention to you that we debated, or we agreed last week about who is going to be on the next planning committee, and that particular planning committee won't form itself until the 1st of June. So it's up to this committee, current committee, to deal with any chairman's actions which become before the 1st of June. See what I mean? So it's still us lot here who have got to deal with the chairman's actions, irrespective of what happens from June the 1st onwards. Okay, Councillor Taylor, are you happy to?
Of course, Chair. You know that.
I'm saying, yeah. Okay then. Well, the date of the next meeting, as I've already told you, is the 1st of June at 6 p.m. and I will close this meeting at 18:54. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm going to stop the live